Don't try this at home, kids.
Hey, this is Jackie from King's Automotive, and today we're putting this 996 Carrera 4S on Ozempic. You could cut.
We're gonna do another modification on the 996 911. We are turning that car, the C4S, into the C2S that never was. Just a matter of taking out the two front axles and the front drive shaft, I guess. We're gonna get into it. Jackie's just jacking up the car now, and we're gonna start shortly.
After this conversion, we should get much better steering feel, less drivetrain loss. We're gonna pick up some MPGs, 2 less driven axles, and we're gonna drop about 80 pounds in weight. Also, if you want to do this in a more budget way without buying conversion stubs, we will show you how to retain your OEM ones without messing up your ABS system. Let's get into it. Sick. Not stuck at all.
To remove the under trays, you have to undo a bunch of 10 mil nuts, as well as a few T25 or T30s. I forget exactly, but basically there's like 15 of them, as well as these metal clips that basically they don't bolt in, excuse me, they snap into the frame and hold up the plastic trim plates just like that.
So right now we've removed the front under shield, exposing the front diff. We're gonna move on to the fuel tank strap to release this cover. Once we get this cover, we can start working on the axle. We're gonna move on to the drive shaft. We'll be able to drop everything down. So these two are 13mm bolts. We also have to remove these 2 braces, give us enough space to drop the shield. They are 16mm bolts.
A good rule of thumb here is always to rethread your bolts into the holes they belong in so you don't lose them. Next step is to take out the cover for the diff and the gas tank in the front. Lower those straps down so you make more room for things to move around once the diff has to come out, as well as the axles.
We will move towards taking off this shield. A couple of 10mm plastic nuts. So now we're taking out the center support for the drive shaft. Should be 2 15mm bolts and 2 15mm nuts. Next, we're gonna focus on essentially one of the trans mounts, brackets. We're gonna take these 4 nuts off, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we got through bolts, nut and bolt on this end. We're gonna support the trans in the meantime so it doesn't just tilt. And we're gonna work on removing the drive shaft. These 4 nuts should be 4 15mm. Then the through bolts are also 15 as well. Amazing. We're gonna focus on removing this guibo. Don't forget this. It's just I think an isolator, so it doesn't bolt directly to metal. When that bracket goes back in, it's on rubber. It still gets bolted via metal. But if you bolted it straight up, it might cause like vibrations against that. Are these also 15s? Oh my God. I've essentially wedged a flathead in between the crevice of the drive shaft flange and locked it against itself. Separate it. Now we're gonna remove the half shafts, the CV half shafts. It's 6mm hexes. Each pair of bolts will be accompanied by a washer. Not that we're putting it back, but be mindful. Now that we have the axles unbolted, we're gonna focus on removing these two nuts for the diff mount. They are 15 millimeters. I did not expect that to happen. Yo, Ralphie, can you grab the screw jack real quick? I think we're almost done. So we're gonna remove these two 10 millimeters to try to give us a little more space with these aluminum pipes. Cool. Yeah, we were like on the gas thing. After we've loosened the axle, the nuts for the studs that hold the diff bracket, we're gonna take out the studs. The objective is to be able to take out the studs, then we can slide the front diff left and right, drop the axles, give us enough space to slide back without contacting the fuel tank, and we should be on our way. So it's a 7 millimeter socket. Shouldn't be in there very tight. I think the only thing we are stuck on is this one axle. No wires, no nothing, no huss, no fuss, bro. Some wiggling around the axles. Now they're both above it. X-delete. Oh! Congratulations on your weight saving, sir. The car went on Ozempic. All right, so next we're gonna tap out the axles, but I wanna get this fuel tank strapped back in. This hooks into the subframe. Put the hoses back. Ready to do one wheel peels. Now we're just gonna tap out the axles. If you don't have an air hammer, buy yourself an industrial compressor, air hammer, and a shock, and lifts. All right, so we basically gotta snip this.
Yeah, that's the reluctant link.
Yeah. So we gotta take the joint out essentially. Oh, so I just snip this and then clean it. Ooh. All right, so now we're taking the grease out of the outboard joint. We're gonna try to expose the circlip without the job being overly messy. We'll tap off the stub shaft over here, get this thing bolted back in for the reluctor ring, and start wrapping it up. Starting to see it. See a little clip there. 2 little ears. So we just have to split that, put it in the vise.
So I'm not gonna show you the whole entire process of us trying to get the circlip off and that stub off because it did take a while. The second axle was a bit easier, but I will say this is kind of difficult unless you have an extra set of hands and the right tools.
We're just working the circlip off.
After you've removed the axle stub, you do need to gut the interior of it, the internals, like this whole joint here with the 6 ball bearings. Take all that out because you don't want that flying around while you're driving and hitting, sounding like it's a blown up engine. So I believe what Jackie discovered here is that if you take a T27 long socket and you stick it between the 2 pins on that circlip, and then you start hammering on that, that's the perfect size to open up that clip, release the stub off of the actual axle shaft, and get it free. Here you can very easily see the groove that circlip lives in. That's why it's so difficult.
Done, bro. Now we got the stub shafts all sorted. We do have to take this brace out. It does hold the aluminum lines in, and I guess this sort of acts as like a trans bracing or trans tunnel bracing. So we'll get this going. It should be 2 15s, nut and bolt. So now we'll move on to putting back the rear brace. Pretty much the same as removal. And as a reminder, just make sure you have your rubber isolators in there, they tend to fall out. So once you have everything lined up, I like to tighten this first. Make sure this is at its final position, that we're not preloading the bushing like crazy. By the neutral point, the tension is kind of off the bolt. You don't want to like preload it. Next, we'll slide the fuel tank shield back in. Fuel tank straps all ready to go. 2 13mm bolts.
So I just did a drive in my newly rear-wheel drive converted 996 Carrera 4S. The conclusion I've come to is that it's 1000% worth it. For those that don't know, the C4, the C4S, which is right behind me, and the turbo models all came with all-wheel drive systems. That also saves you 82 pounds of weight between the axles, the diff, and the drive shaft. And quite frankly, a rear-wheel drive car is much more fun.
For asking? This rear-wheel drive conversion is welcome. You can't have this much fun with all-wheel drive. It's just impossible.
You can very much so do it DIY. The hardest part about this is probably taking the axle spindle off of the actual axle, separating that. The circlip is very hard to get into and to get loose, but it's totally possible. You can definitely do it with hand tools, hammer, something you wedge it in there, totally capable. It does understeer a tiny bit more than it did before. However, I know for a fact the engineering behind a 911, especially after the Widowmaker, the reason that they made it a staggered wheel setup in part was because too many people were getting killed on the 930 turbos, the Widowmakers. So they actually made it staggered to compensate for the oversteer. Naturally, you're supposed to get a little understeer, right? Less grip up front, so, and also less weight, of course, the engine's in the back. However, I will say it's by no means a deal breaker. You could barely see the difference. And quite frankly, I've also lightened the rear anyway, so I am pretty sure my weight distribution is still just about the same. My wheels are lighter. I have no cats. There's just straight pipes back there. Well, to the mufflers. I guess I could also lose some weight with the mufflers. Never mind that. The fact of the matter is it's still very fun. It's still very controllable, especially if you have traction control on, which 100% works as it should. So does ABS. Kick the back out a little bit. Have some fun with it. And that's exactly what I did. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like this video, comment on it if you've done the same mod, subscribe if you haven't already if you're new to my channel, and I'll see you soon. Keep driving.